Hello, BookTube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. I've got a recent reads today because didn't I didn't finish my books in time for a Friday reads, and I, I wanted to finish them off. But first of all, I'm going to start with a mini book haul, as I often do, um, and this was inspired by Book Trek, which is coming back for, I believe, its second year in this format, where it's a whole summer of books about Star Trek. And I think I think all of these books were in Vin's from Revenant Reads an announcement video. So, they've been on my radar for a number of years, and they're all by the same author as well. It's only three little ones that I've ordered. Um, I find these semi hard to get hold of in a way because they're if you want a specific Star Trek book, sometimes they're a little bit more expensive than normal secondhand books. But this first one is one I've wanted to read for a while. Well, it looks funny with the light on it. You can see it's kind of embossed. Uh, and this is Imzadi by Peter David, and it's obviously focuses on Riker and Deanna Troy, and I believe Imzadi, from what I remember, is the sort of life partner or word for life partner that Deanna Troy uses for uh, Riker. And interestingly, I've only just noticed this, but there's a young Riker and an old Riker. So there's got to be some sort of time travel business going on, I imagine. But I've always heard really good things about this one, so I look forward to that. Um, the next one, another Peter David one, but this time I think it's quite a comical one. As normally anything with Q in is quite comical. This is Q, who's kind of a funny character on Star Trek, and he's a being that can appear and disappear and um, has enormous powers, and kind of a mysterious character, but a bit of a trickster as well. Uh, and this is Q in law, uh, so I'm guessing it involves some kind of uh, marriage thing. I can't remember which character that is. It's someone's mother. That's bad. Considering all three of these books are the next generation, I'm not a huge next generation person. I do really like next generation, but DS9 is the one that I fell in love with, and the original series when I was a kid. I used to watch the original series. I've never sat down and watched all of TNG all the way through, but I think I've seen most of it. But I love Patrick Stewart. And then this is, I think, uh, well, it's another a Q novel, with the Next Generation Q, and I can't remember who that is. Is that the Q from the original series? Was there a Q in the original series? No, it's not Q, is it? It's Trelane. It's Trelane, who's another type of Q, the same type. So yeah, that's my little free book haul, and they're all Peter David. So I hope I like Peter David, or I'm in trouble, really, am I? I do have some other Trek books that I haven't read yet as well. I've got a couple of Una McCormack ones, and I know I like Una McCormack. Um, and I have the first in that Frontiers series, I believe it's called. But let's go and talk about the books I've read over the last week or so. And we're sticking with the science fiction theme. So I was feeling like I hadn't read much science fiction recently, not since the Blue Book of Nebo, and that's kind of very well, a post-apocalyptic science fiction, so not very spacey. So I wanted to read a spacey book, and in my opinion, the person who writes the best spacey books at the moment is Adrian Tchaikovsky. So I've picked up the first book in his the Final Architecture series, Shards of Earth, and I see this one talked about quite a lot because I think most people regard it as his second best series after Children of Time, um, and I think that's probably true from this first book anyway, um, because I really enjoyed it. So the the premise is it's set in the far future, and Earth has been destroyed by these beings called the Architects who arrived, and they're just giant moon-sized beings that appear, and there's no communicating with them. And they call them the Architects because they don't destroy things; they mold them and recreate them. I'll put the picture of the cover of the book up, but that's got Earth pulled apart, and they make them into kind of sculptures, and they do that to ships and beings and things as well. So Earth's been destroyed. The book is set 50 years later when the Architects are gone for the time being, but a ship has appeared that has been architect and has been pulled apart. And we follow a salvage crew of. It's a bit. I find it was a bit. I feel like he was trying to be a bit like The Expanse, and he's got this kind of quirky crew that you follow around. But this salvage crew are sent to find this ship before they know that what's happened to it, and they obviously find it and are horrified. And then there's a big sort of political implication to this existing this return of the Architects, and the people we follow are Idris is probably the main character. He is what is called an intermediary, which is a being, not a being, a human who has been. Well, I'll go back 50 years first. 50 years before the book starts, the way they stop the Architects is originally the first time an architect turns back is when a 15-year-old girl makes contact with them, and she seems to be able to communicate with them in some way and make them aware that there are beings on these planets and things that they're pulling apart, because to the Architects, humanity or any other species is just like bacteria to them. They don't really know they're there. They're just casualties of what they're trying to do. And this 15-year-old girl makes contact with an architect and turns it back, and she is known as Saint Xavier, Saint because of she saved so many lives. And they create a program to try and recreate her brain chemistry by experimenting, doing surgery and stuff on people, and trying to make their brains like Saint Xavier's. And it basically works, but at incredible cost, and incredible cost for the characters, or the people, I should say, who they do it to. And Idris is one of these intermediaries, they're called, because they can contact they can make contact with the Architects. And 50 years ago, the intermediaries had convinced the Architects to turn back and leave them alone, just by making them know that they existed as beings. So 50 years later, we're still following Idris because of the weird experimentations they've done on him. Doesn't sleep or age, and he's part of the crew. This is one thing I found a bit weird and unbelievable, is that if he was part of the team that that saved humanity and all these other species. Why is he not world famous? Why is he like bumming around as a pilot on a salvage crew? But we'll ignore that. We also follow a character called Solus, who or Solace, who is a Myrmidad, which is like a Myrmidian from the Iliad, but they are like these genetically engineered warrior angels. They're all female and they're all clones of each other. Um, and we follow her. She was again 50 years ago. She was involved in the saving of uh, all the planets, and she was sort of helping Idris back then. She's been like deep freeze for 50 years and brought back to try and recruit um, Idris for the Parthenon, which is the name of the group of Myrmidians. Um, and she's a really cool character. She's like armored up, badass, genetically created to be like a warrior, and they can fly, and they've got incredible technology and stuff. Um, and so she's sent to sort of infiltrate the crew of the salvage crew, and the rest of the crew are like very varied species. And I think Tchaikovsky's really good at this. He's got a great imagination, and he churns out books like like 2 or 3 books a year, and they're always really different and full of cool ideas and stuff. So the crew has like there's like a crab thing that's their accountant basically, and he has like TV screens on his shell and like sells advertising space to the TV shows. And there's another character that's called a hiver, and it's kind of like a collection of insects or bugs that live inside a metal frame, but think as a communal sort of being. And there's loads of other really interesting aliens in this book. And basically, the book is the story of them finding this ship that seems to herald the return of the architects. And there's another interesting aspect of it is the way he deals with faster than light travel is through a thing called I've just completely forgotten the name of it. I think it's called underspace. And basically you have to travel through underspace, if that's the word for it, to go faster than light. And the intermediaries like Idris, because of their weird brain chemistry and their ability to talk to architects, they can survive in this underspace where everyone else is put to sleep or they go mad. So there's some weird connection with the underspace and the architects. And there's also things called originators, um, who the architects seem to be scared of these ancient relics that they found on certain worlds that were left by people they call the originators, and they can sense when there's an originator thing on the planet, and they won't destroy it. So, as you can tell from my description of this book, it's incredibly dense world full of lots of different species and lots of different political entities. There's also a third character you follow who's a spy for another for like the humans, and there's lots of religious elements to it as well. And I found it a bit overwhelming at first. I was looking. I was looking for like pictures of the characters on Google, because sometimes you get fan art, and I think that can help you like visualize all these different characters. But I didn't find any, but I did find like a Reddit read along that where someone had made like a cheat sheet. So the fact that you kind of need a cheat sheet for the book not to get confused, or I did anyway, um, perhaps makes me think it's a bit overly hard to read at the beginning, and you can tell it was designed as a trilogy or a longer series. You can tell this was never going to be a standalone book because you spend so much time being introduced to the world and the characters that it wouldn't be worth doing for a standalone book. But that said, I did really enjoy it, and I think Adrian Tchaikovsky is really a great writer. I wouldn't perhaps start with this one as your first Tchaikovsky because um, just because of how dense it is. It's kind of like June, and like in that you really get thrown in and have to make your way through, but not as successful as June in making you part of the world before the end. Um, and I think the whole intermediary traveling through underspace thing, piloting them through underspace thing, it is taken from June Skilled Navigators. But yeah, if you like stuff like The Expanse, I recommend this, and I will read the rest of the series. But if you want to read another Tchaikovsky to start with, I would go with Dogs of War, or um, which is a shortish standalone, or something like Children, Children of Time, which I think is a modern science fiction masterpiece, and will probably be in the SF Masterworks series at some point. And that is about a spider culture, which is sounds scary, but it's brilliant. But yeah, very good reading experience, and it kind of was what I wanted. I wanted a dense, spacey book with lots of weird aliens and stuff. Maybe not so many weird aliens, but yeah, I do love Tchaikovsky's work. Um, I also finished my audiobook, which was Carrie Soto is Back, and that is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This I didn't so much like, and it made me think about audiobooks in general, and how, because I'm new to audiobooks, I'm thinking about this all the time when I'm reading them. I'm thinking, is this affecting my reading experience by consuming it in this format? Because I think something like All Creatures Great and Small, which is which I really enjoyed and is quite a humorous, quirky book, I think that helped the audio because it was narrated by the actor from the TV series, and it brought the characters to life. But I think with this Carrie Soto is Back, because I think it's a bad book, I think it might have actually shown, like, or maybe my imagination, if I'd have been reading it in paper, would have changed my experience of it. But because I've enjoyed the past two Taylor Jenkins books that I've read, and I read those rather than listen to them. That said, I think this is generally regarded as maybe her worst book. It's about a tennis player and her dad, and her mother dies when she's young, and her dad's like a tennis player who gets injured and never makes it like big professionally, and he basically trains her from as soon as she can hold a racket, and her whole life is just training to win because he thinks that she can be the best player of all time, and that's her whole life, her whole goal. I said in my last video when I started listening to this, she's kind of a Novak Djokovic character because she is like very determined, but none of the rest of the players on tour like her, and she's not very nice to anyone really. She's quite mean. Like, she's not very nice to her fans and things as well at times. But yeah, so you're following this tennis player through her career, and she retires early because she gets a bit hurt, and this is her like 6 years after she retired, trying to make a comeback because another character, who's a much more likable character called Nikki Chan, but doesn't play as beautiful tennis as her. Plays brute force tennis, kind of like the Williams sisters when they came in and changed women's tennis. Um, and yeah, you're following her comeback and her trying to win her record back. Um, and you mostly follow her and her father. I liked her father a bit more than her, but you still get that thought like this is someone who's driven their child into the point where they're quite hard. They don't trust anyone. They like their relationships are all ruined and stuff because she's been her whole life's just been this determination to for one goal. And I think she could have done more with that whole aspect of um, the kind of like the Williams sisters. Their father was a bit like this, I think, where like how morally correct is it to do this to your child and sort of impose your own dreams on them to the point where they're never happy with any success. And she does kind of touch on it, but not too much. And she kind of gives up on the concept. Another aspect that Taylor Jenkins Reid is usually really good at, which I think normally saves her books from their weaknesses, and I think her normal weaknesses actually aren't in this book, which is structure and endings. I think the structure and ending of this is fine. It's just the characterization and the story itself is quite boring. Um, but her normal strength is the setting. Like Daisy Jones is basically 1970s rock and roll, and it's just a very like cool setting, and you really get immersed into that setting. And what was the Hollywood one? I forgot the name of the Hollywood one, but the 1920s Hollywood one. That one also you get really immersed in the setting. Um, but this the it's meant to be like 80s and 90s tennis, but because you're so focused on this one goal of her winning her uh, like grand slams, it doesn't really. She just throws the odd 90s or 80s reference in, like hotel phones and stuff. And there's one incredibly cringy bit um, with Princess Diana. That's I hated it, but yeah, generally I did not enjoy the book at all. I thought there was like I quite liked the dad character. I quite liked the love interest character, but those are side elements. And overall, it was just a bit boring. And I do think I do forgive her a bit in that it's quite hard to make a tennis match dramatic and not boring because it is just essentially two people hitting a ball at each other. So it's quite hard to dramatise that. I'm sure people have done it well, but not so much on this one. But yeah, what am I reading now? I've just started a new audiobook, which is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, and I'm enjoying that so far. I really like Richard Osman as like a TV personality, and it's kind of weird how successful he has been because he's made some incredibly. He used to be a television producer, and he made incredibly successful television shows as a producer, and then he started being a television personality as well, and um, on things like Pointless, and that's still, and he's still been very. He's a very charming and quite funny man, so it works really well. Um, and then all of a sudden he's done these books and they're like massive runaway hits. But I guess it helps that everyone already knew who he was. But yeah, enjoying it so far. Very Agatha Christie. Um, it's about a group of old retired pensioners who are investigating murders in their spare time. But yeah, but just started it. I haven't started any um, new written books because I literally just finished Shards of Earth. So I don't know. I might start The Fog by James Herbert as a horror mayhem thing. Um, I also have, I'm going to reach over and grab it. Ugh. Yeah, I also have this, which is Constantinople, about the last siege of Constantinople, and this would fit in with Historathon. So that just about just like 47 years in time for this quarter. And this, I bought this last year for Historathon and never got to it, but I read another Roger Crowley book on Empires of Sea, Empires of Sea, I think it's called, which was about the Ottomans and the Habsburgs and the Siege of Malta, and that was really good narrative history. So I wanted another narrative history, and I think it was Book Time with Elvis who recommended that originally, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, that's those are the possibilities. Maybe I'll start both of them tonight, and maybe a Star Trek book as well. But I might hold off on those for a little bit. But yeah, what have you read? Carrie Soto is Back book tube. I'm sure that one is kind of been read by a lot of people. I guess Taylor Jenkins reads pretty popular on BookTube. I know there are Adrian Tchaikovsky fans out there as well, so let me know if you've read the Shards of Earth trilogy. Do you think it gets better? Is the first book the best book? Yeah, have a good one, BookTube.